YouTube, what the Rome 2 crap is going on? You know, it's probably been a little too long since we jumped into Rome 2, in my opinion. And I'm wondering why it's so quiet. I can't hear the music. We gotta hear the old classic Rome 1 music. I'm still running the mod here. We'll find out if that's too quiet or not. So yeah, if the sound's a little bit off, but it seems like it's too quiet from where I had it last set. So yeah, let's see. I have a few replays for you, actually. It won't be quite as much as it sounds like, and you'll see why. But, so, a lot of times you all challenge me to use, like, weird and different armies, and that's exactly what I've done here. But bringing Galatia against the Odrysians, I know the Odrysians have strong, albeit weak to missile type infantry. So their infantry is quite powerful, but they will be quite weak to missiles. So I brought a completely missile-focused army. I've got 4 Celtic slingers and 3 mercenary Syrian archers, 3 very heavy melee cav, which are the noble horse, 2 Cappadocian cav, like right here, and then my infantry line is just I think 4 or 5 cheap Galatian swordsmen, which these guys pack a decent bang for their buck, but they won't be anything compared to, you know, the full-on Thracian troops. Now my opponent, his army, if you ask me, was not a very good plan for Galatia. Now typically Galatia, well, it may be a decent plan for Galatia, and I'll explain. Galatia typically is going to bring Galatian legionaries, and these mercenary veteran hoplites could maybe spend some time holding them, while potentially he outflanks with Thracian warriors. His cavalry is a little bit weak, though. Galatia can field some pretty serious threat with the Cappadocians, and all my opponents brought to face it is 2 Thracian horsemen and 2 Thracian cavalry, and the Thracian cavalry are skirmish cav. So, yeah, that's what you're going to see here is the skirmish cav. And my opponent's in big trouble here. And I started off on this hill. I moved down and I start engaging his Thracian cav in some skirmish tactics. And then I'm going to move up. Well, now I wonder if it's too loud because that's about all I can hear is music. So I guess we better swap it back down. There we go. Make sure it's not too loud for you. Alright. It's always kind of hard to tell how loud it is because I can't hear myself on the microphone and how loud I am there. Anyway, I'm going to open up with all of my skirmishers on his Thracian slingers. These are the only skirmishers he's brought. And when you're going to bring a faction like Thrace that has infantry that's so particularly vulnerable to missiles, you really have to be careful about if you don't choose to bring a lot of skirmishers, you need to have a way to deal with them. So this Thracian slinger gets knocked out in 2 volleys, and then I'm just going to fall back. I have this position on the hill, and my opponent's army is going to be quickly turned into a rush army, whether he likes it or not. And then his Thracian cavalry are not bad, but my Galatian raiders are better. So I'm just going to eventually turn around and go into melee with his Thracian cav, and that's why they're running away now. And then I'm going to engage his Thracian horseman out here with my noble horse. Now over here I make a mistake, and I definitely engage his... I send a mercenary Cappadocian over here, and it's way too close to his mercenary hoplites. This was a big mistake. But as you can see, I'm engaging my opponent. And right now, though, he was accusing me of hill camping, which is kind of funny since I actually came down, fired shots at you. My cavalry's down here engaging you. You're the one charging straight towards the hill. I'm not hill camping, I'm shooting you to death. There's a difference. So yeah, that was kind of frustrating. Now his Celtic slingers here have actually racked up a few decent kills while I was turned around running. That's okay, I've got skirmishers to spare. And as soon as I finish knocking out his Thracian horsemen, I can just pull away from his hoplites. The hoplites won't be getting quick kills per se on my Cappadocian cav. I mean, they kind of will, but not really. So I'll be able to get away with a lot of my cavalrymen intact. So now all I'm going to do is just starting to split up, lure my opponent up the hill. I'll get a sweet downhill charge with my Galatian swords into his mercenary hoplites, and I'll actually probably win that combat because he's not in shield or in a hoplite wall. So again, he can accuse me of hill camping, but I'm engaging him. He had to charge the hill because he brought a poor skirmishing component, and he's just going to get throttled. So every time I bring an army like this, like a kind of a different army that's fun and thought out to be particularly challenging for a faction like, so this army I thought it out to be challenging for the Thracians because I knew that with this many skirmishers their infantry would be at a big disadvantage. It seems like I always get someone mad and they always start accusing me of being a hill camper, you know, a coward for running away and all that other stuff. This was my goal right here, was to start peppering Thracian nobles with skirmish fire. You can see that I'm already ripping them apart. And so my opponent concedes defeat and leaves the game. Well before it was over, well before we got a chance to see what the outcome was. Now, he had a lot of infantry left, and I had engaged him pretty early with my Galatian swordsmen, so it's hard to say exactly how this would have gone. If he would have punched through, whether I would have had enough cav and ammo and everything else to keep him busy. I did kill his cavalry, so he was in a very vulnerable position. But, and I know some of you are going to be like, man, what a jerk! How could he leave the game like that? I'm not saying this to run down my opponent. Again, every time this happens, I'm trying to use this as an opportunity to spread good etiquette. This is poor etiquette. My opponent here was mad, and he's mad because his army is very much outpicked. He's going to get ripped apart by my skirmishers, and so the easiest thing to do here was to accuse me of hill camping and then concede defeat. Really here you just got outpicked is all there is to it, and because of the pick you end up getting forced into a bad scenario where you have to charge up a hill to try and engage me. So how would he have known that I was going to bring 7 skirmishers? He really wouldn't. Most people don't do that in Rome 2. They come infantry heavy. That was the idea. My army was supposed to be tricksy. So that's just kind of the depth that you can add to Rome 2, and that's one thing I like. It's not exactly present in Attila just yet because they haven't balanced out heavy cavalry. So Rome 2 is not perfectly balanced, and heavy infantry armies are still pretty beastly. Like, for instance, if my opponent had brought like an Arverni or Boyar army full of heavy infantry and heavy cav, what I did here would have gotten completely smashed. It wouldn't work. But again, I knew that the Thracians couldn't offer that, or the Odrysians in this case, so that's why I brought what I did to try and make for a fun battle. So let me show you another battle here. And you know, again, on the case of good etiquette, my opponent conceded that one way too early. I'm going to show you a battle where I purposefully brought a pretty crappy build looking for a challenge, and my opponent's build is just absolutely superior to mine, but I don't quit the game. I fight the battle. Because it's not my opponent's fault that I bring a somewhat crappy faction and a crappy build. So in this case, I really wanted to try an old build that I'd used in Rome Total War a long time ago, where I used pikes and swords interchanged with each other in the line, and I decided to use thorax pikemen because they've got better stats, and this was probably a mistake because I could have saved quite a bit of money and potentially gotten an extra unit by just putting like levy pikemen or something here, and now I'm going to face a problem. I've got Thessalian cav, which is only medium cavalry, I believe, now in Rome 2. No, they're heavy. Okay, which is good. Thessalian cav is okay. They're not bad on the charge. They don't have great stats in prolonged melee, but they're not bad on the charge. As far as archers go, my opponent's going to outrange me because he has 3 Persian light archers. In the cavalry department, he's got these Bactrian noble horse, which are very heavy melee cav with extremely good armor. And what this means is that my Thessalians are going to get their faces stomped, basically, because these Bactrian royal cav, and see, that's funny, so let's see how the Bactrian royal cav stacks up to a companion cav. So 46, 27, 10, 76. So exactly the same down the front side. 21, 60, 95, 70. 21, 70, 170. So that's funny. My guys have more armor, more health. Interesting. So it looks like the companion cav is slightly better for whatever reason. Okay, so yeah, in any case, got the Bactrian noble horse. I don't have any way to win this battle. What was funny is that my opponent was acting kind of funny through the whole thing. Like, he sends me this message and he's like, are you very experienced at this game? And I was like, well, I've played quite a few battles. And he's like, well, good. So you may not understand what it is I'm doing. Or it's like saying something you may not understand. Basically saying that I wouldn't understand how grand his strategy is, or his army pick, or something like that. And I was like, well, your army's not that grand. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You bring a lot of Thurio spears to give enemy cav a crappy hard time. You've got pretty solid cav of your own with 4 Bactrian noble horse and a Bactrian royal cav. Only 4 thorax swordsmen, so it's pretty straightforward. You got a decent skirmishing component, a crap load of javelins, so that I can't really see how he's protecting them with the Thurio spears. I can't really get too close because the Thurio spears themselves can start launching javelins, and they do. And so the range differential here starts to get challenging. So I mean, again, it's a good pick. I don't think that it's some like he was trying to make it sound like some grandiose all-encompassing strategy. My army sucks, and I brought it on purpose to get a challenge out of this. Like, I mean, my army literally blows. So I decided to split my swords to face his swords, because if I march forward with my pikes right now, I'm just going to get them destroyed by javelins from Thurio spears, and I don't have anything that I can use as a meat shield. I'm just in big trouble here. Like I said, my army is completely mispicked against what my opponent has, so he's going to move up and act like he wants to attack over here. Let's fast forward and show you this, because, again, the engagement takes a little while to start, and it's mainly because, like, for instance, right here, I want to go ahead and attack his swordsman to try and just get this over with, but his javelins here are going to shower the flank of my thorax sword. So again, it's not like this is some kind of marvelous strategy. It's pretty straightforward. I put my swords over here. When you come engage them, you're going to get showered with Thurios javelins, and then I've just got a few hillmen over here to kind of keep these guys honest. You know, against a different type of army from Macedon, this may not be particularly effective. Like, for instance, if I had not spent money on pikes, brought more thorax swords, I could have simply just engaged his Thurio spears and hillmen over here, and then I would have saved, I think, a little bit of money, not much. My biggest problem would have been against this army is his cavalry, and there's honestly not a whole lot of answer that I could have brought to it. I would have had to have brought a couple of Thurio spears of my own, so I go ahead and spread out so that I can try and get outflanking position on my opponent, but again, he's already got another extra Thurio spear, so my guys are going to take an unnecessary amount of javelins. And then the way this charge happened kind of goes against me too. His guys kind of come into my guys at a different angle, so that I end up getting 2-on-1 right here. But then I get 2-on-1 over here. I go into shield wall immediately to try and make the fight last longer because of the javelins. You can see right here, my opponent's got great position with his archers and javelins. I'm going to bring my thorax pikemen up just to guard the flank, and they're going to sit here and eat skirmish fire. Basically, my opponent can just sit around with his hillmen and Thurio spears and just wait. He can just be patient, basically. So right here, we're doing some jockeying. He's got his Thurio spears, so there's no way I can really win a cav fight over here either, which is unfortunate. But I can go ahead and try and charge his Thurio spears because I don't think they're braced. They're probably on fire at will. So I'm going to try and kill a fair few of them with a quick charge, but this is going to allow his Bactrian noble horse to get into combat with my Thessalians without a proper charge. I mean, I do destroy his scale thorax hoplites pretty bad, but it's not Attila. They're not going to die in entirety. I get a great charge on his general here, but if I remember right, his general just flat out wins this fight. And I'm not really sure why. I may have gotten yeah, it's because some of my companions come over here and get into his Thurio scale thorax hoplites, actually. That's not a Thurio spear. So yeah, I have no chance of protecting this flank. This flank is doomed. They're just going to sit here and eat javelins. And my opponent can just work his way around my flank, but he's not even interested in that. He's just going to sit here and throw all these javelins from the Thurio spear. So again, no great grand strategy here. It's just utilizing the fact that Thurio spears can throw 5 javelins before they get into combat, and my Macedonian army was very ill-equipped to deal with any Bactrian army, much less this one that my opponent brought. I think there's a lot better Bactrian armies, and I'm not saying that to try and bash him. It's just, like I said, the only reason I'm saying it is because I think it's kind of funny. Now, I did get my Aspis Cav into the back of his men here, and I probably should have started cycle charging, because I just leave them in combat, and they're doing great. It's just that they would have gotten more kills cycle charging around. They are about to... I do get into his archers over here, so this Thessalian Cav's going to get a lot of kills, but it's being pursued by a Bactrian noble horse. And then, like I said, his Bactrian royal cav just absolutely destroys my general because of the presence of those Thurios, or scale thorax hoplites. He's going to get a rear charge. Won't be a great one, but it'll get him kills. And like I said, I can't hold off all the Bactrian noble horse at this point, and my pikes are too inflexible to really be able to do anything about any of this. So I get my Aspis Cav out. I do charge into the back of these Thurio spears, and the Aspis Cav are about the only unit I have in this battle that does any good. But they're doing good while all the rest of my units are getting absolutely mauled. I have easily over 100 and some odd kills with the Aspis Cav at this point. But, you know, the fight's definitely going against me. So I was starting to get enough kills to potentially make those guys worth it, but the rest of my army died, and my opponent takes home a huge victory here. Again, mainly because I picked a horrible army. but it was because I wanted a challenge. I never know whether the people I'm going to face are going to be new or experienced, so a lot of times I may even pick a crap faction or a crap army, and that's why I end up in a position like this, where my opponent just is able to easily walk all over me, because my pick has no answer. Like, how can I answer Thurios spears with Thorax pikemen? I can't. They're going to rain 5 javelins on me, half kill my men, and then they can outflank me. I can't stop 4 Bactrian Noble Horse with this build either, because I didn't bring any other spearmen. So again, bad pick on my part. But the interesting thing about me picking that bad army and knowing it from the very beginning of the battle that I really had no chance of winning, this message goes out to my first opponent. See how I didn't quit that battle? And it was my fault that I lost there. So again, not saying that to be mean if you're watching the video. I'm just encouraging people to use good etiquette, because the problem with Total War games is there's not always a ton of people in online multiplayer, and a lot of people are turned off to the multiplayer on the Total War games, because when they get online, something like that happens to them and they get mad and they won't come back. And so that's why it's okay to just fight the battle out. Now, my opponent wanted a rematch with me, so I gave him a rematch. Or I wanted to rematch with him, and he agreed. And this time I decided, I'm going to bring a serious build as opposed to, a crappy Macedon build. Now, he picks Armenia, which is an interesting pick against the Arverni. Not a pick I would recommend, just because the infantry department, you're going to get hurt bad. And also, the Arverni have an answer to horse archers. They have an answer to cavalry because of the levy freemen. So I've got 5 levy freemen, and these guys can throw javelins and basically be a huge nuisance to cavalry, skirmishers, horse archers. They can be a huge nuisance to all of that. I can effectively keep horse skirmishers at bay. And then I've got 6 heavy horse, which are not nearly as good as many Armenian cav, but the numbers of them and the cost-effective nature of them is going to make this difficult. I've got 2 Oathsworn, which there's only one way the Arverni, or well, I say that, there's technically 2 ways, but one feasible way that they're going to get rid of Oathsworn, and it's by charging them with shock cavalry, rear charging them. You can do it with skirmishers, and the Armenians have a few skirmishers that might be able to help pull that off, but it's not going to be super easy with the protection of the levy freemen, so that's why I'm saying the feasible way is to rear charge them, but even that's going to be difficult because I'm swarming in the background with 6 heavy horse. And my opponent does the same thing in both games. He kind of like lazily pushes around like a cav contingent on the flank, probably just looking to see if the enemy gets hasty and engages. And over here I'm keeping my infantry here, but I notice that my opponent starts pushing out a Persian hoplite to support his cavalry, and he's got 3 Persian cav and a royal cataphract. I don't have much experience against Persian cav, to be honest. They don't... Okay, so they're listed as very heavy. That's interesting to know. Their stats are not super impressive, but since they're listed as very heavy, that makes sense. So that extra impact damage that they're going to cause is going to be big. I don't really know how the fight straight up between them and my heavy horse will turn out. Shock cavalry obviously usually does quite good on the charge and then poor in extended combat. And my heavy horse have some pretty solid attack and melee defense stats, especially compared to the melee defense stats and armor of the Persian cavalry, but they will get a much better charge. And they have a heavier mass. So my opponent splits his army, which I don't think was a good idea for him. And the reason I say that is because I can easily keep his royal cataphracts from getting into the back of my men over here, and my infantry over here can absolutely crush what my opponent has to offer. Now, he fires some shots at my levy freeman first off with his Eastern Archer, which is a waste. You don't even want to put ammo down on those guys. The Eastern Archers would best be saved to try and snipe my general. But I have Celtic Slingers, which is a bit of an addition to typical Arverni sword rush spam crap army. And I've only got 6 sword infantry, so I wouldn't say that this army is a complete infantry spam by any means. So, because I've only got 4, I've got 4 chosen swordsmen and 2 Oathsworn, so only 6 sword infantry. But I do have a lot of levy freemen, so all in all I have 11 infantry, but again, fairly balanced between cav power and foot power. Now, my Celtic Slingers are actually going to do really well versus the Eastern Archers. They have shields. They have way less missile damage, obviously, but their shield will help protect them, while the Eastern Archers are just going to start soaking up slinger fire with no shield or armor to help them. and the rate of fire on my slingers is a little bit better probably than his Eastern archers. So, and the range should be the same between the two of them. So yeah, my guys have lower missile attack, but will be firing more. And if you look at this flank over here, we're kind of lining up and jockeying. All I need to do is get the charge of his Royal Cataphracts interrupted, throw some javelins to weaken them, and then let my heavy horse start to whittle them away. But honestly, I don't even have to let my heavy horse kill his Royal Cataphracts. All I have to do is just keep them over here long enough for me to destroy his infantry line, and then I'll have troops left over here, and my opponent's Royal Cataphracts won't be able to do anything about it if they get too weakened by this fight. So as you can see, he starts pulling some of his Persian cav back over here, and I refuse to let that happen, so I'm going to engage his Persian cav. Again, don't know exactly how that engagement will go. I give attack orders with my Levy Freeman onto his Royal Cataphracts, and we'll watch just exactly why this isn't the engagement you want as the Royal Cataphracts. Javelins right there. So the Royal Cataphracts lose 5 men to Levy Freeman, and then immediately get engaged by my heavy horse. So this is a fight they still very well could win, and they've already racked up over 100 kills just by smashing that many Levy Freeman. But by losing 10 men to Levy Freeman, it's going to make them a lot more susceptible to my heavy horse, who's going to remain in this fight for a long time. So not a cost-effective trade for the Royal Cataphracts, in my opinion. But again, those are good units. So the infantry fight starts over here. My opponent has Kartli Axemen and an Axeman in his main line. So let's see, here's some Axemen. Actually, all these guys are just Axemen and Hillmen. Over here, he's got Kartli Axemen. Yeah, he's got his Kartli Axemen over here, and they're doing something weird. My chosen swordsmen are engaged. Actually, I had 6 chosen swordmen. I lied. Yeah, I've got 8 sword infantry. So yeah, never mind. I came sword heavy. I don't know what I was thinking. My bad. My opponent does get behind me and gets a Persian cav charge here into the back of my Oathsworn. It's going to cause quite a bit of damage, but there's only 34 of them, and it's not enough to rout an Oathsworn, especially an Oathsworn that was winning the combat decisively. And it's going to get pinned in here by Levy Freeman and Heavy Cav. You can see, though, that the Persian cavalry here just absolutely destroyed my heavy horse on the charge, which didn't expect. I probably should have tightened up the formation of my heavy horse a little bit so as to minimize the impact of the Persian cav charge. But see, like over here, it's a little more even of a trade. But still, the Persian cavalry being very heavy and getting that big of a start on the charge, it actually lets them start winning. Whereas over here, one of his Persian cav didn't get a good charge, and so one of my heavy horsemen decisively won. And then I was able to come mop up the next with a 2-on-1, and so now I can push into his archers. My infantry is crushing his axemen. These axemen don't have a prayer against Oathsworn and Chosen Swords. So you can see that the infantry fight over here is going very well for me. My opponent does get some infantry behind one of my flanks where he initially broke some of my Chosen Swordsmen, but they're getting peppered with slinger fire in the back. So he can use his infantry to try and outflank me here, but they have no answer to the slinger fire. So my Celtic slingers are going to absolutely wreck these axemen over here. And as you can see, he has no way to kill these Oathsworn. They are going to just rip his axemen to pieces. And these Oathsworn over here have already done that, summarily destroying his axemen with almost no losses. The Chosen Swordsmen didn't do as well against the axemen. In fact, these axemen got quite a few kills. I'm not really sure what they got. Oh, it was probably against these Levy Freemen that were in combat. But yeah, as you can see, the Oathsworn, even very depleted, is just making mincemeat of the axemen because their attack and damage is so much better. So the Persian cav will get a decent charge here again, but there's going to be too many heavy horse for them to deal with. And this time they will get dragged down and destroyed. And I use Frenzied Charge to give my guys a little bit of an extra boost off the charge. So yeah, his Persian cavalry is going to die here. Over here, my Chosen Swordsman beat down his Kartli Axeman. And the cav fight finally wraps up over here, him having taken 25 losses. 25 losses on his Royal Cataphract. He has a ton of kills, but almost all of those are Levy Freeman. Some of them are heavy horse kills, which are important, but if you add up the couple of Levy Freeman and the heavy horse, it's still not near the cost of this unit. He's still got about 300 talents to go to make these guys worth it. And even if he can make them worth it, the question is whether or not you can impact the battle. So again, Royal Cataphracts are a great unit, so are Eastern Cataphracts. Here I tried to get into Shield Wall, but I didn't get there early enough. So these Persian cavalry are going to kill my Chosen Swordsman. And I'm just going to chase his Cataphract General with my Levy Freeman, trying to get javelins. I didn't get them. But yeah, this basically gives my Chosen Swords a few more minutes. He got his Kartli Axeman into Shield Wall over here, which is why they're holding out so long against my Chosen Swords. But I don't even care, again, about all that. I'm just over here regrouping this. So all the time, it didn't matter if my opponent was going to win this flank, because I knew that if he did, what he would get left with wouldn't be enough to handle what I was going to have in the center. So that's why I think splitting his army was a mistake. But then again, if he didn't split his army, I could have brought the full force of my infantry to bear on his, and he would have probably lost the infantry fight even worse. And then he would have had to definitely fight all 6 of my my heavy horse with a lot of Levy Freeman support. So I don't think either method was good for him. This definitely helped him get a lot of kills and make the battle look a little closer. So I guess this decision in the end was probably a good one on his part. Man, the Blood mod on Rome 2, or the Blood DLC, looks so much better than it does in Attila. The one in Attila just barely even functions. I know people keep telling me, turn your particle effect. My particle effects are on max, and some people tell me, oh, just download the Radius mod. I don't want to have to download a mod to fix something that I bought from the developer. I understand it will fix it, and I appreciate you all telling me about it. I'm just, I'm a little bit frustrated, and it's like I shouldn't have to download a mod to fix something that they sold to me. And some people are like, well, they shouldn't sell it at all. Well, I guess that could be argued. Some people say they don't. I don't care, honestly, if they're selling it to me. It's a couple of bucks. But if you're going to sell it to me, make it good, and it's not good. So, yeah, and I rarely chew on CA because I like them. I've met them. I've spent time with them. They are fun guys. I think they genuinely love Total War. There have been a lot of problems with the launch of Rome 2 and Attila, which is extremely frustrating. But at the same time, like, you know, I don't. What am I going to take it out on them and sit there and hate them? I don't know. You know, like, I don't know how to handle it. All I can say is that the release of the Blood Pack, in my mind, was just wrong. I don't like the level of support that we've gotten for patches on Attila. It's been too low, and in my opinion, the DLCs have been many, and the patches have been few. Now, Attila is not in the kind of condition that Rome 2 was when it launched, and I would be lying if I said it was. It isn't. The campaign on Attila is really fun, and they've created something very unique there, and I very much enjoy it. Now, that said, the multiplayer is woefully unbalanced. It got a lot better in patch 2, and there's a few things that they could do to change the multiplayer. But if you look at the multiplayer of Rome 2, now I know there's a lot of people that didn't like the way Rome 2 ended up in the end. They thought that it was too slow, and there were a few challenges with the battle. And honestly, to say that the game was too slow is seriously just an opinion. I don't mean that to say that your opinion is inadequate or wrong. I'm just saying that's all it is. It's an opinion. Myself and many others really enjoyed the slower combat because it allowed for more maneuvering and more strategy, whereas I guess some people didn't like it because they like a faster paced, kind of more clicky type experience. And fast clicking and micro definitely still helps you in Rome 2. I think the biggest problems for me in the end of Rome 2 was the fact that the barbarian sword spams were so strong. They weren't unbeatable. They have been beaten. They can be beaten. But they were very strong. And I guess that infantry spam wasn't exactly what we hoped to see in the late game, but that's what it was. Some people claim that melee cavalry got too nerfed in the late game, and they're probably right, but I wouldn't say that it needed to be made a whole lot better. I like the fact that you can't just run cavalry into infantry and ruin them head on like you can in Attila. You can rear charge them, and it's quite effective, but also there's times when you would be rear charging Roman infantry with melee cav, and the Roman infantry would take like 3, 4, 5 rear charges before they would rout, because melee cav just causes so little damage to infantry at this point in the game. So that I disagree with for sure, and wish that it was a little better. But at the same time, like I kind of like the fact that it's not like Attila where you can't just haphazardly run any cav unit into the front of any infantry unit and be guaranteed at least 30 kills, and sometimes more, like 60 or 70. So anyway, my opponent's remnants of his army here are beaten, and he calls GG, and I said GG to him. So it was a fun couple of battles. He definitely had the better army, and he played well in the first battle at making sure that I literally could do nothing about what he did, and he beat me soundly. And considering that, in my mind, and it's not to say that Armenia isn't capable of beating the Arverni, they can, but I think that he had a disadvantage faction-wise here, and that all things considered, he did very well. He was outnumbered by 200 men and killed basically the same number of men I did. It was almost entirely due to his royal cataphracts, of course, though. So and they killed a lot of levy freemen. Again, not trying to discredit it, that's a lot of kills on a royal cataphract, not bad. And these are all levy freeman kills as well here. I don't know what kills these guys got. It's possible that could have been some sword infantry. But as you can see, my slingers played an important role here. For being as cheap as they are, these guys got some important kills, killed some nice infantry, and as you can see, my Oathsworn, this one 120 kills and barely even damaged, and this one had almost 200 kills. Of course, it was getting quite beat up because it had gotten rear charged by a Persian cavalry. This is the heavy horse that got a hold of all the archers, so that's why it got a ton of kills. The rest of my heavy horse, though, again, impressive performance by the Persian cavalry. Better than I thought they would be, so it'll teach me a little respect for those guys. In any case, like I said, good game to my opponent. It was fun. I thought that the fact that he had brought Armenia here and that I had a pretty powerful Arverni build, and notice I did bring Arverni, not Boii. The Boii are even harder to beat in this case, and so I tried to not go full on crazy with like Attila or the Boii, but the Arverni are still a very strong faction, very capable. Anyway, hope y'all enjoyed that one. Gave you a few battles at once here. It's been a while since we've seen some Total War Rome 2. Honestly, and some of you have asked me this question, like, do you like the multiplayer better in Rome 2 or Attila? I like the multiplayer better in Rome 2 for now. Well, why don't you play it more still? Well, it's because anytime there's a new game that comes out, I try and give it a chance. I try and understand it and see what it is that could be changed to make it better. Just because I'd like to be able to give feedback. And then, do I dislike the Attila multiplayer? No, I actually do like it. The Sassanids are crazy fun to play with. Although I don't like the fact that every melee cav can completely flatten an infantry unit, I do like the fact that shot cavalry have some majorly impressive charges in the game, and it kind of looks nice and feels nice when you're doing that. Obviously, it feels painful when you're watching your infantry get charged by them, and I've been in that scenario. Skirmishers seem like they're capable of getting... Skirmishers seem a little bit weird in Attila right now. I'm okay with the fact that they can't kill heavily shielded, heavily armored infantry from the front. So I don't think I necessarily mind where skirmishers stand in Attila right now. They're not killing machines, and most of them are pretty cheap, and they reflect the fact that they're not killing machines. They're kind of like support tools. However, there's a few out there that need to be fixed, like the Persians, the Sassanids. They need better archers. Their archers are way too expensive and don't really offer anything in return. So I'd love to see the Sassanids get improved archers. I don't want their infantry or cavalry or anything else to be tweaked at this point. If they would just give the Sassanids better archers, that would make them an interesting faction. Indeed, and they're already an interesting faction. I just think it'd make them more competitive. So I like some of the mechanics of Attila. I like the shot cab charges. I think that from many respects, it's an interesting game. You've got two-handed axes in the game that are an interesting component. They may be a little too cheap for what they offer for the most part. Again, some units aren't. So I don't know. Just all in all, I feel like there's not as much depth in Attila, and it's because of a few reasons. One, because again, all cavalry units wreck all infantry units on the charge if they're not braced in very dense formation, and sometimes they still get wrecked. So that's one mechanic of Attila that I dislike and feel like takes away a lot of depth from the game. The other one is the fact that most of the factions are something Germanic, and that's also something that takes away from the depth of the game. Now, not every faction in Rome 2 is crazy unique, but if you look at the factions like the Ardiae, there's really no one else like them. Now, you have the Boii, the Arverni, and Attila, which could all be considered to be similar because of their strengths. That's true, but even if you take Galatia, which is another barbarian faction, all of a sudden, again, they feel very different than those factions I just mentioned, just because of the simple fact that they don't have heavy horse and they don't have Oathsworn. So all of a sudden, it kind of changes the dynamic, and I mean, so they're kind of the same base Celtic type faction or Gallic type faction, but you know, they have a slightly different flavor, and it's little flavor units like that make a big difference. Skirmishing cavalry in Rome 2 plays an important role, whereas in Attila it's completely worthless, except for maybe Hunnic horse archers, and even those are hard to use. So again, these are the reasons why I feel like that Rome 2 has more depth. Again, the Iceni feel different than the others. And a lot of us, it's funny because a lot of us complain the Suebi feel very different from the other barbarian factions. a lot of us get mad sometimes in Rome 2 thinking that the factions were too similar to each other sometime, but then Attila came out and the factions were extremely similar to each other for the most part. And I think that this is something that if the Creative Assembly goes back and just makes a few small tweaks to the rosters, as far as like changing units and not just stamping out Germanic horsemen for every Germanic faction, like give each faction something a little different. And it starts to give them a bit of a unique feel, so that not every Germanic faction is going to bring 6 noble Germanic swords, 6 Germanic archers, and 6 noble Germanic cavalry. And that's the problem, unless you're the Burgundians, and then you just basically replace noble Germanic cav with lancers and axemen with the swordsmen, and great, you're good to go. So again, it's all very predictable. The same thing with all of the Saxons and the Nordic factions are all pretty much the same too. Two-handed axemen supporting either heroic cav or horse lords. I mean, there's really nothing to it. So I think that that's the reason why a lot of people now aren't as big on Attila multiplayer. Is it lacks some depth, whereas Rome 2 has a lot of depth. These factions are all very different from each other for the most part. There are some that are very similar. Some of the factions are certainly crappier than others, but again, just a good example, the Lusitani. Who else is really like the Lusitani in the game? The closest may be like the Aravaki, but again, these guys are so different from some of the other factions that it's just refreshing. Carthage, for instance, is an interesting faction. They're not anything like Rome or some of the other civilized factions. They got all these all of these mercenary troops. Just interesting, to add in. Does it make them a powerhouse? No, but you get a lot more variety and it's fun. So anyway, that was my thoughts for the day. Video for Saturday, just trying to give you something a little different. I'll probably have some more footage for you all later. Hope you enjoyed it. HeirofCarthage signing off for now.